a Monday morning, and I hope everybody's ready for the week because I don't think I am. I'm in Maryland, and let me know where you're coming in from. I would love to know. That's always a good thing for me, just because I like to see where everybody's at. I love to see when we have people overseas, but throughout the US as well. So I'm going to talk today about insulin resistance. Now, Dr. Bickman, my favorite metabolic doctor, just dropped a tweet talking about fats. Last week I was talking about fats. I was talking about the hexane in fats. He was talking about something else. We're going to go into that. I want to talk about insulin resistance, what's causing it, the things that you can do to get over it and reverse it, and all things related, including all the stuff up above that is linked to insulin resistance. In fact, Bickman also just did a tweet about how he's fascinated about all the diseases that link into insulin resistance. Now, it's I haven't been able to dive into it directly yet. A little bit I did, but even endometriosis. I had a friend who was talking about a family member who had endometriosis, and it got me thinking. So I did a little tiny bit of digging because I haven't had time to dig into it, but on the surface, there seems to be a link with some insulin resistance in the fact that high testosterone levels are still there, and there's some issues going on. So I'm going to dive into endometriosis this week and see if I can find deeper answers, and I'll bring that to you. I don't have a specific answer right now. It does appear that they could also be linked, which is crazy, right? So if you have diabetes, and thank you, Luna, um, and you're suffering with all these things, it's really simple. One other tweet I want to talk about that I saw this morning was a doctor who said, if you have diabetes, are you addressing the root cause, which is insulin resistance, and the foods and the factors that are causing it, or are you taking a pill for every one of these symptoms? Because if you look at these, and my typical trip to the doctor's office with when I had most of this, so I was being given medications for all of these different things. So medication, 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 medication. I ended up with 10 different medications. Are we just addressing those symptoms of this one root cause called insulin resistance? And even when we're dealing with insulin resistance, are we just doing medications that are doing a band-aid, dropping the numbers, or are we actually addressing the problem? So just, a lot of conversations this weekend, a lot of, I try not to work on the weekends, but I always do. When people need me, I answer. But I have another person who is using one of those scanners, and she keeps saying, well, my body wasn't calling for this, or my body wasn't calling for that, the two components of the system I represent. And I finally said, well, if in that moment your body's not calling for it, and the product is actually designed to help reduce the load of the food that you eat, are you missing a big piece of the factor? Because if you're not getting that protection from the food that you'll eat later in the day, how does the scanner know what it is you're going to put in your face, and how that's going to affect your body at that point in time? So I agree with all of these other things that are going on, but you guys understand the protocol I talk about addresses the insulin resistance at the root cause, and I want to get into that. Yes, depression is also linked, Luna. So can I dive in and tell you why insulin resistance is happening? And then in a very quick, I'll try and make it under 5 minutes. Then we're going to start talking about things like PCOS, and depression and diabetes. Another doctor this morning was talking about what I say all the time: address it when it's insulin resistance before it gets to diabetes, because once you wait, um, it's much more difficult to reverse, right? You want to get it at the beginning stages, and so I'll give you some clues as to how you can see that, right? So, Tina, I'm not sure I'm not sure. Text doesn't always translate for me, so in my head I have different word inflections, and I don't understand the meaning of what you said. Can you expand on that for me, Tina? So, okay, so insulin resistance is just really simply this: it's a resistance to this hormone called insulin. Why do we have insulin resistance? We have too much insulin in the bloodstream. So we're going to work backward. Too much insulin in the bloodstream too often causes this resistance to it. How do we get to that hyperinsulinemia? Well, we're eating foods that are creating spikes of sugar. And so, how are those two linked? Because insulin, as a hormone, its primary job is to take this sugar that we're eating, or glucose, and deliver it, I've been painting again, to every cell of the body. So every time you spike your blood sugars, you're going to spike your insulin, and we're eating foods that are converting into insulin way too often, and it's continually spiking our insulin. So turning into glucose. So understand that it's not just breads and cakes and candies that are turning into glucose. Your fruits and vegetables do it too, and there's a scale called the glycemic scale. That scale just tells you how quickly food turns into sugar. So low on the glycemic scale means that it turns into sugar less quickly. High on the glycemic scale means it converts more quickly. So blood sugar spikes. I was listening to an amazing doctor, and he said, when we have those blood sugar spikes, and this is absent of sugar, and these foods that we're eating now, like, and it does include the breads and cakes, but even some of the fruits and vegetables we eat, our blood sugar spike is going straight up like this. A blood sugar spike should be kind of like this, and when this happens, insulin stays low. When this happens, insulin goes high. Now, we're eating this kind of food too often and too much, and so we're training our body to put excess amounts of insulin in our bloodstream all the time because it's trying to protect us from that sugar that's going to be hitting our system. So when you're eating every 2 hours, you're creating this insulin resistance in the long run. It may look good in the short run, and I hear all these people talk about your metabolic health and all of that, to eat every 2 hours. It's absolutely exactly the opposite. And metabolic scientists, I don't know a metabolic scientist who would adhere to eating every 2 hours. It's bogus, and the people who are talking about it just don't understand metabolism and what's going on. So stop eating so often. Understand that the foods that you're eating, even when you think you're doing good with raw organic foods, they're turning into sugar too quickly in today's modern food environment because everything's been modified, it's been manufactured, it has changed the way it introduces to our body, and then we're breaking foods down even more. So this long process that we should have had when we're eating whole foods, of going from the mouth and creating digestive enzymes from the moment we start chewing, we're creating enzymes all the way through the gut until it exits the body. We've shortened that channel, and now we have too many of those enzymes because everything's hitting too quickly. We're not getting enough of the some of the digestive enzymes that we need because we're not masticating or chewing our food. So yes, I have protein shakes every once in a while when I'm busy, but I try not to do that because we need that chewing action when we're introducing food into our body. It's a little piece I don't talk about much. All right, so insulin resistance is just food borne. It is food borne. It's not medication borne. We're not deficient in a medication. That's not what's making us insulin resistant. We're deficient in nutrients from our food, primarily fiber. And so if we fix that, we can start to fix the insulin resistance. I'll go over why fiber in a minute. Does anybody have questions so far? So too much sugar in the bloodstream too quickly creates insulin resistance. And the next question is, I don't know. Do you guys want to know? Which I'm trying to think. A lot of people want to know, how do I know insulin resistance is me? Let's go over that. So, hey, Paramjeet. So if you have a belly that's poking out, for men, a waist over 40, for women, a waist over 35. That's visceral fat generally, and that means you're insulin resistant. If you have a high blood pressure, being 130 over 80 or higher, that's insulin resistance. If you're having skin tags, skin discoloration, that's insulin resistance. PCOS and erectile dysfunction, that's insulin resistance. Any one of those would show that you're insulin resistant. Any more than one of those, you need to pay attention, okay? And yes, exercise helps insulin resistance. That's one of the 6 simple steps that I have for helping reverse insulin resistance. Now, exercise is going to help the glucose in the system be taken up more readily by the muscle cells, but it's not going to change the fact that you're spiking your insulin and that other cells are becoming resistant to it. So insulin is a piece, or I mean, exercise is a piece of the cure, right? And I would absolutely say, I mean, even people who are in a wheelchair, who are bedridden because of pain, you can do some movement. And the more movement you do, the more insulin sensitive you become. Well, I wouldn't say it that way. Doing more movement will help you become insulin sensitive. Don't overwork it. Herbal medicine. So it can. So Luna, I'm going to talk to you about a protocol that I use that reversed my diabetes within 6 months, reversed my hypertension, got me off of 10 different medications, reversed my sleep apnea and a number of other things, stopped joint damage, actually helped me regenerate one of my knees that was supposed to get replaced almost 2 years ago now and no longer needs that. So it's real food products. But let's talk about herbal medicine, because I hear people say, well, this works and that works. We have a number of people who were holistic practitioners, and one of them in particular up in Toronto would do this whole big long laundry list of things that people needed to do, herbs and supplements that they needed to take, and specific points in the day they needed to take them to losing fat by exercising and bulking muscle. Does it mean progress with insulin resistance? We'll talk about that in a second. But she used to write these big, long protocols of all these herbal remedies, and it was complicated and it got to be expensive. And so she started doing the protocol that I do, and that's primarily what she gives people who come in for insulin resistance related disorders now. And we have doctors who are prescribing it now too, because it's a natural food alternative to all those medications. So, if you're building muscle, you're probably becoming more insulin sensitive. Yes. So when you're insulin resistant, your muscles are resistant to insulin as well. So you'll see in people who are insulin resistant, prediabetes, diabetic, that they have a loss of muscle tone. It just doesn't appear like they have a lot of muscle. However, can I show you a picture? I have a great friend who was or is a bodybuilder and was still diabetic. So let's do this one. Oops, wrong picture. My slides are not caught up to me. So hang on, I'm trying to get to her picture because I want to show you. So that's not the only indicator. I would say, generally, I would say yes, that if you're building muscle, losing fat, you're becoming more insulin sensitive. However, take a look at your other symptoms. Are you still having headaches? Are you having joint pain? Because I wasn't a bodybuilder status, but I was power lifter. So I worked out 6 days a week, had a lot of lean muscle mass, still carried some fat, had lost some fat, but was still highly insulin resistant. I'm trying to find her picture. There it is. I skipped past her. So let's take a look at this lovely bodybuilder lady of mine, friend of mine, who was diabetic and now does the system that I talk about, because I'm malfunctioning with my with myself this morning there. Okay, so this is Christy. So this was her. Look at that muscle. But you can see the bloating and inflammation in her body, in her face. Now, you wouldn't have known it when you saw her, but she was suffering. She had severe diabetes. Her doctor, she was suffering with a number of health issues that she didn't talk about. Look at being a trainer and a coach for IFBB pros. It was hard for her to talk about that. She started the system. I introduced it to her, and this is her at the same uh, off-season time in the same suit. And you can see she now has muscle definition. The bloating and inflammation is gone. Her face is thinned out. She had diabetes too, IBS, inflammation, and she had anxiety and low energy, but she was still very muscular, right? So be careful with just looking at that one thing as an indication of your insulin sensitivity, because she had very little fat, lots of muscle, and she was still type 2 diabetes, which is what I call end stage insulin resistance. I hope that answers it. Don't use just one thing as your indicator. Although generally I will agree that losing fat and gaining muscle helps you become more sensitive. So most people with insulin resistance, so we're going to talk about most people, but there's always outliers, right? So there's skinny fat, there's people who are heavy and are more healthy than people who are skinny. So typical insulin resistance looks like this. You're going to have some belly fat. You're going to have that belly that starts protruding. You're going to start putting on extra weight all over the body. You're going to start having all those issues that were up there. Let's put them back up. And brain fog, skin disorders, all of that's going to start to happen for you. However, there are people who don't have some of those symptoms and are still very insulin resistant. So muscle loss happens when we become insulin resistant because the muscles are actually resistant to it. So I'm still going back to that question. When we exercise, we're allowing the muscles to open up and take more of that insulin in, or that energy that we've just put into our body. Yes, helping us become more insulin sensitive, but it's not the only piece. I do not have to be a doctor to understand science and to relay information from doctors who I've actually met and talked with. And yeah, so I worked in medical clinics, by the way, and worked with doctors who are dealing with metabolism and hormones and all of that. So yeah, and you should not be jumping on people's pages assuming things either. And besides that, let's talk about that. Doctor bit, right? So I was sick. I had almost all of these things up here, going to the doctor at least twice a month, being put on different medication, because they're looking at this symptom, that symptom, and nobody could figure it out. Even when I had pain in my right arm, numbness and tingling in my right arm, not one doctor said, your heart's about to give out. When my liver panel was going up, not one doctor said, we need to address something is wrong. Not one doctor put all of that together and said, honey, you're insulin resistant. Let's take care of that and you will probably start feeling better. It was only when I found a natural product that I addressed my diabetes for, had no idea all the rest of this was going to happen, that everything started to get better. And I went on a search for, why did I address one thing with natural food products and reverse my diabetes within 6 months, which none of the medications were doing, plus reverse all of these other symptoms, including a joint that needed to be replaced. I have a knee replaced and 2 hips replaced. The last knee was supposed to be replaced 2 years ago and now no longer needs to be replaced. Do I have to be a doctor to understand how much it impacted my life? No, I don't. Take a seat, open your mind, and let's talk. Okay? So, let's talk about the product, and we'll talk about why this particular product works. So what we're doing is a tea in the morning and a pre-meal drink before we eat. Why these 2 products? The tea in the morning, if you have heard of GLP-1 agonists. So talk about things like Mounjaro, Trulicity, semaglutide, come on. Now I'm all excited. All of those drugs. If you've heard about those, put a 1 in the chat. If you've heard about those drugs, Mounjaro, Trulicity, Ozempic, semaglutide, the ones that people are all taking for fat loss. Okay. So the tea that we drink in the morning has a GLP-1 action in it. Right? Thank you, Edwin. It's like think with a brain in my head, unless I have a PhD behind my name. And when I do Google shit, it's like the NIH, PubMed, those places. All right. So, and by the way, that's where Pickman and a lot of these guys get their information too. So the tea that I drink in the morning has this GLP-1 action in it. So GLP-1 means that it's helping you be, in very nuts and bolts, helping you feel satiated. It does it through 2 actions. I did a video from Dr. Huberman, a neuroscientist, who's talking specifically about not our tea, but the type of tea that I'm talking about and its actions on this GLP-1 action in your body, where it makes you feel full by addressing some issues in your gut, makes your gut feel a little distended. You're feeling like you're full, so you're not having the cues to eat. But it's also acting on pathways in the brain, shutting down hunger in the brain. So now you're more satiated and you're not wanting to snack. I drink this tea every morning. It's what's in my cup now. It's best hot, but our tea is about 375 times more potent than the teas in the bagged tea that Dr. Huberman's talking about. It's been scientifically designed. We harvest it at the right time. We fire roast it to get the components released from the bulk of the plant, which is what you're getting in those bagged teas. And then we're extracting that, concentrating it, and then we take it to a lab to purify it from all those pesticides and toxins that you're getting in the bagged teas. So now with this, chlorogenic acids, one of the main components that can cross the blood-brain barrier, are present in this up to 375 times more than in one bag of steeped tea. That's the component that's getting through the brain, right? So yes, this is a clean, organic, excellent product. Thank you, Al. So that's the tea that we drink in the morning, giving you satiety, but it's also giving you energy without jitters. By the way, my blood pressure was up to 180 over 150 at some point during every day. Cortisol levels up and down, right? Blood pressure goes up when cortisol goes up. My blood pressure every single morning is 112 over 74. In fact, sometimes after the live, when I'm so excited, I'll take my blood pressure just to be like, did it spike? Is it up? And it still is about 112 over 74. So that's no medications. Not one medication do I take now. I just drink this tea in the morning. Helps with energy, satiety. It helps with fat burning. It helps your body produce their own ketones. And we'll talk about ketones later too. So there's that. That's what I do in the morning. In the afternoon, and I do some fasting. We're going to come backwards and talk about fasting and why. So then I do a pre-meal drink before I eat. Why this? This is not just a fiber supplement. There's 7 different types of fiber in it, soluble and insoluble, and we'll talk about fiber, but let me finish this. So it helps you feel more full before you ever eat. Thank you, Lisa, over on Facebook. It helps you start to slow down the delivery of sugars into the system. So satiety, stopping snacking, mental clarity, physical energy, this is helping blood sugars. Put them together. Now we have a solution for insulin resistance and the resultant diabetes. And we've seen a number of these things happen to get better for people who just address the insulin resistance by addressing the food. So thank you. I'm going to go there right now. So if you guys, because I have so many questions, we'll take a quick trip down the road of where to order. On TikTok, you're going to go to my profile picture up here. And when you get there, you're going to click on the red light symbols right under, well, actually, it's going to bring up another picture right below. So let's get this done, and then let's do. You guys, it's Monday. I have so much on my mind. Sorry that I'm all over the place. But look, when you get to my profile, you're going to see this red lights. Click on the link right under that. When you get there, you're going to click on this. That'll take you to my landing page. You click on the top link here, and that will get you to the products. I want to talk about that first. Please make sure that you have a name and that you're on the actual company page. It should look like this when you order, or you're just not getting the product. So I was logged into somebody else's account because I was helping them this weekend. So make sure it has my name at the top if you want to make sure that you're getting the guarantees, which I haven't even talked about, and my coaching. So then you're just going to click on the buy now. That's going to take you to the page. And I just want to briefly go over this. You can get it in 3 different flavors for the tea. You drink that hot or cold. It works best for fat loss hot. Lemon, ginger, lemon, or black. You just select your choice. The pre-meal drink right now only comes in the orange, which tastes like a light creamsicle. And then leave it on subscription to save yourself money. Okay, that's where you're going to get it. Now, why there? You're buying directly from the company, which means you're going to get those guarantees. When you do not use that link, you're not getting my pricing, you're not getting my discounts, you're not getting my coaching, plus you're not getting the 90-day money-back guarantee, you're not getting the quality guarantee, and you're not getting the low price guarantee. You won't pay any more for it than I pay for it, and you won't find it anywhere else online for less unless somebody's selling expired or pirated product, okay? So all of that. Plus, when you do order, I send you out texts, I send you out emails, and then I start communicating with you. It's not like I'm here telling you about a product and then all of a sudden I'm gone. No, you get calls. I had texts this morning when I woke up, people asking me about other things they take or other things they do. Is it going to break their fast? Can they still do this? Can they still do that? How should they address? I'm here for it. I answer all those questions. You get to text me. So it's not like, oh, Misha just sold me this thing and now she's gone. I'm here. Okay, so now back to insulin resistance and fiber, or what do you guys want me to address? Do you know? Is there something you want me to address? Otherwise, I'm going to hop into why fiber. I kind of jumped into that quicker than I like. But let's talk about fiber and why it's so important in this whole thing of insulin resistance. Fiber should be attached to every carbohydrate that we have naturally and normally in nature, outside of sugar or honey, which has bees, right? Sure, Alicia. So if you're currently on medications and you want to do the system, and I'm assuming you have medications that need to be taken with food. Am I correct in that? Your fasting window, you guys, the fasting window. So we're advocating for a 16-hour 8 fast. You don't have to have food with the medication. Then you just take the medication with the tea. If it's a medication you have to have food with, you can do something like avocado with it, which is going to give you a high amount of fiber, very minimally spike your insulin, if at all, and it will give you something in your gut for those medications to hang on to. But no bagels, no oatmeal, none of that. Now, if you need more than that, then you're going to have your meal. You're going to focus on proteins and you're going to focus on fats. And then what you're going to do is you're going to shift your fasting window. So let's talk about fasting real quick, and then I'll get back because it's fasting, fiber, and fats this morning, right? I have some important information about fats. All right. So fasting, why this fasting? When we are eating, so I'm going to go back to the normal level that we talked about, and then I'm going to talk about how to address it if you have foods in the morning for medications, okay? So we're just going to talk about the typical one. If you have your dinner at 6 p.m., your fasting window really doesn't start until 8, but we're going to start at 6, okay? So it takes about 2 hours for that gut to clear out. But it takes about 4 hours, depending on what you ate, for your blood sugar levels to finally just kind of get down and normalize. It takes several hours after that for insulin to get the clue to say, I can go down. I don't have to be running the show anymore because they're not eating more. And so I can just take a rest. That's at about 8 hours. Now, if you had high amounts of carbohydrates, or you have something going on like diabetes, it could take longer for that to come down until the insulin gets trained. So you could be looking at 10 to 12 hours, but 8 hours typically for insulin to come down. Now, it takes a couple of hours for the body. It's not just like, oh, insulin is down and the other hormone glucagon is out. It takes a couple of hours for the body to go, oh, insulin is down. They're not putting more food in their face. We need to get glucagon out to get more energy. Yep, I still have breakfast for lunch too. It still is a break fast. But so the two hormones I just said, insulin, sorry about my paint hands. Insulin is an energy saver. It transports sugar, but it's also an energy saver. It blocks fat breakdown. It does all of that. Glucagon loves to burn fat, loves to clean things up. It's an energy spender. Okay, so insulin runs the show though. Insulin always takes precedence over glucagon. So glucagon can't come out, burn fat, clean up junk cells, do all of that stuff until insulin is down. Now, when insulin goes down at about 8 hours, then about 2 hours later, glucagon is going to start to come out because it feels safe now. So it's going to come out and it's going to be like, yay, I can start doing this cleanup job. Hey, gut, let's get to work. And so then your gut cells start to regenerate. Your gut starts to clean up at about 12 hours. So now we're 12 hours into a fast. If you cut it there, you haven't gotten to the real fat burning and metabolic change benefits. Our bodies were not meant to eat as often as we're eating. So at about hour 14, now you have some fat burning, real fat burning going on. Your ketones are up, your HGH is well up. You're having all of this action. So you wait about 2 more hours in this fat burning cleanup stage, and you're starting to reverse your insulin. Now at hour 16, you eat a meal and you just start off by starting with fiber first, okay? So I don't want to have to think about it. I do the protocol. So I do this before I eat anything. Now, if you're having meds for breakfast, it's simple. We're just going to take that whole 16 and 8 and we're going to shift it. So you're going to wake up in the morning. You can still have your tea in the morning and have your fiber. There's nothing that says you can't have these two at the same time. I do it all the time. It's not in the same cup, okay? So you have your tea in the morning, you have your first meal. Make sure that your first meal is high in proteins, high in fats, utilize your fiber, and then you're going to count 8 hours from when you wake up and have that first meal. If you have it at 6 a.m., then your last meal should be about 2 p.m., and you're going to be fasting through the afternoon, which tends to be harder for people than skipping breakfast. Plus, most people will sit down with families for dinner. That's why we advocate for the time slot we do. But if your time slot looks different, we're just going to adjust around that. So we're just going to turn that clock and say, where does your 16 hours or your 8 hours start, depending on your life and what works for you. Okay, we just want to keep the eating to an 8-hour window and the fasting at least 16 hours. Does that make sense? All these comments about breakfast, it's absolutely like I'm moving, plus I have a bunch of leftovers. So yesterday I had chicken meatballs with jalapeno and cranberries in it for breakfast. So break fast just means you're breaking your fast. That means it could be at any time of the day. Typically I love eggs and some type of red meat for breakfast, like steak. And it doesn't, you guys stop doing lean steak. You want steak, you want fats with it. We can explain that. Your fast starts at midnight, lunch at 4 p.m. See, Edwin's got it down. So that's what you're going to do. So if you're doing it in the morning, that's fine. Let's talk about the dawn phenomenon, just because that crossed my brain with this time slot thing. So in the morning, sometimes I've had people say, my blood sugars are still high in the morning. Okay, let's talk about why. So you have this thing called the dawn phenomenon where your body says, oh, it's time to wake this person up. A few months ago, I was getting up at 5 a.m. Now I'm getting up around 6:30 a.m. Because life is changing, right? When I was getting up at 5, I would wake up before my alarm would even go off. Your body's smart. What timeline you set for it is what it's going to start to adapt to. Right now, my body wakes me up at about 6:30. My phone was dead this morning. I still woke up at 6:30, was able to plug my phone in, start my morning ritual, and then go live. What's happening? Your body says time to wake up. So it increases the hormone cortisol. Cortisol starts to make your heart beat faster. It starts to it actually releases a little more insulin into your system, trying to get energy to your cells. And so you can have this phenomenon where your blood sugars go high, or not insulin, but your sugars go high because your body's trying to get energy to wake you up. And if you're severely insulin resistant, it could take a while for those morning blood sugars to come down. So some people, it starts to happen within the first month. Some people, it takes 3 months for their blood sugars to come down. That's an indicator of how insulin resistant you are and how much you need to stay consistent with your plan of action. And for me, it's the protocol. So the cortisol early in the morning is waking you up. It's getting your heart beating faster. It's dumping more sugar into your system so you have energy to get up and do your day. If you'll wait for about 2 hours during the fasting stage and wait for that cortisol to start coming back down, your blood sugars are going to drop. That's when you want to really check where your blood sugars are. If they're high when you first wake up, that's the explanation. And that happens to a number of people. So the dawn phenomenon is real. With that, it also explains that in the morning, when you eat food, more of the food is going to convert to glucose than it will later in the day. Because in the morning, the body says we got to get up, we got to have energy for the day. So everything you you are doing is creating energy for the day. So it's converting more into glucose. Whatever you eat, it's turning more into glucose in the system to provide your body with energy. And that's regardless of your fasting. So in the morning or in the first meal, I always advocate for high protein, high fats, less likely to spike your blood sugars. You start adding oatmeal, bagels, all of that, you're just spiking your blood sugars more high in the morning than if you do it in the afternoon. So avoid the carbs in the morning, have them later in the day when there's less need for it to convert into energy, and that will help you manage the blood sugar too. If you're insulin resistant, should you be taking a cortisol supplement? If it's a self-prescribed cortisol supplement, um, is it to help regulate your cortisol? Is that what you're talking about? Something to get your cortisol down? Let's talk about that. The best ways to get your cortisol down are address your insulin resistance, get rest. Okay? Address your insulin resistance, get rest. If is it working? Is the cortisol supplement helping your cortisol levels? With fibromyalgia, so when the body is insulin resistant, it's not getting signals to all of the cells. So every single cell in the body needs insulin. It needs it to deliver energy to it. Unlike other hormones that only certain cells have receptors or need those receptors, every single cell has insulin receptors. When you tip the scale from being insulin sensitive to insulin resistant, all the cells start to become insulin resistant, except for a few that kind of have a hyperactive motion in it. And I'll talk about those later, but that's where skin tags, hypertension, and skin discoloration come from, is those hyperactive ones that are taking up excess energy. With insulin resistance, what's happening also is it's creating, because of this these function of inflammation in the body and the cells not being able to have the receptors they need, it's affecting the way your nerve pathways fire. So now, instead of nerves firing one to the other, those electrical little impulses are kind of going out the side and in all directions, but it's not hitting the nerves that it needs to. So you have some pain in places you don't understand. You're having fatigue. You're having a number of other issues. Most fibromyalgia is actually insulin resistance. There is some fibromyalgia that is caused by neck injuries or spinal injuries. But if you haven't had that kind of diagnosis and you have fibromyalgia, which is basically a flu-like pain that radiates through your body. I don't know about you, but when I was ill, I would tell my kids, I say, it feels like somebody stuck a vacuum cleaner to my belly button and sucked all the energy out, and all that's left is pain. Okay? That's how I felt for a number of years. I was just in so much pain from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. I was on pain medications for my joints and for the body-wide pain, Norco, Hydro, gabapentin, and then I was cycling through Tylenol for the extreme amount of pain. And I have a tough mind. I'm not weak-minded, so I dealt with a lot of pain. In fact, I dealt with so much of the neuropathy and edema that in the medical clinics, I would just be like, okay, I got to get through this day. I got to get through this day. And then at some point, my body would say, no, we're done. We're done. I don't care what your mind says. This body says I'm done. And my legs went out for me in the middle of the medical clinic multiple times until I could no longer work in the medical clinic because I would just collapse in the middle of the hallway from the pain. So when I address my insulin resistance, that no longer happens. I'm not on any of those medications for pain. I don't have muscle relaxers that I have to take to sleep or to function at the end of the day. I don't have any of that. And I don't have body-wide pain that's just making my mind, my ADD mind, feel even more overloaded. I will do a video this week on fibromyalgia and give you all the sciencey stuff because I'm just a woman like you guys. I cannot remember all the science actions right off the top of my head. So I'll have to go back to resources and find those specific actions. But fibromyalgia, definitely links in, and Dr. Bickman talks about it in his book, Why We Get Sick. Okay, so your skin and hair looks better, Edwin. That's amazing. So Edwin's on the system. What else are you noticing? Because you guys, this is not all about weight. I talk about this a lot. I do not want people to get stuck on weight. No, extreme obesity is not good for anyone. It's not about fat shaming. It's not about body positivity. It is about body positivity because if you care enough about yourself and your body, you're going to understand that extreme levels of fat is not healthy for you. So you're losing some weight with the system, but what I really want you to focus on is these things that Edwin keeps dropping in. So better hair, better skin, My skin is much better. I don't have that picture up. I have a picture, and I'm going to do a video today from just before I started the system to about 6 months into the system to now, and you'll see the progression of my skin actually getting better. Yeah, and creative juices. So your wellness, they call it. So that verve for life gets better because you actually have energy in your brain. Your body's not sick. You're not having all of that go on. So you have more space and room for creative efforts and for happiness and for spending good time with your family and being less triggered every time something goes wrong. So let's come back up because I missed something. It's the hat trick. You're pre-diabetic, you have fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, brain fog, fatigue, sleep apnea, migraines, vertigo. Hello, because that was me 2.5 years ago, plus some other things. Okay. So I also had PCOS. I had, I mean, I'm postmenopausal now, but I had problems with all of that, thyroid issues, all of that. So all I did was address my insulin resistance. When that came down, all of those things started to get better. I've had 3 joint replacements, 2 hips, 1 knee. Um, and the second knee was supposed to be replaced 2 years ago. It was popping, it was clicking, it would slip out of joint all the time. The tendons around it and the ligaments around it were loose, and the synovial fluid was drying up because of inflammation, and the meniscus was getting very, very thin to where I was bone on bone on one side. Now, 2.5 years later, that meniscal space is over double of what it was, and it's evened out. The meniscus has regrown in the absence of inflammation. The synovial fluid is back. It's not painful to kneel on that knee. It's not painful to walk up and down stairs. It's not slipping in and out of joint. Insulin resistance affects every cell and every portion of your body, not just your gut, not just your brain, but yes, your joints. So I don't have to have that knee replacement now, thank God, because I mean, I'm in less pain than I was before the joint replacements. But anytime you put something foreign in your body, it's just never the same again, right? It's never the same. So although I appreciate that I've had those, I wish I would have known about this years before so I didn't have to have those. Brain fog, your brain is not getting the energy it needs. It's having misfiring of neurons in the brain, so they're not firing from space to space like they should. You're not getting the glucose you need to your brain because your brain is insulin resistant. So now you don't have energy. You have misfiring in the brain. Receptors are shut down. You can't take up dopamine and serotonin like you should. You have brain fog. Fatigue is the same thing. You're not getting the energy to the cells because they're resistant. The receptors are no longer working. Fatigue means your body's not getting the energy it needs, and eating more isn't going to help that. Okay. Crazy thing. Fasting actually gives you more energy because it's allowing those cells to start to say, ooh, I'm not as inflamed. I'm not scared of insulin anymore. I can take up the energy when they do eat. And now you have more energy. Now you're burning fat for fuel, and you just naturally have more energy. Fasting does not make you hangry, does not eat up your muscle, does not all of that when you're doing it intermittently. When you're going past 48 hours or 3 days, you're starting to maybe have some muscle problems there unless you have a way to get in extra nutrients. So this intermittent or short-term fasting is actually creating energy, helping your muscles grow, helping everything be more sensitive to that insulin. Sleep apnea, there's a number of ways that that's happening. Part of it is in the brain. Part of it is in the fact that this visceral fat that we talk about all the time not only affects your gut, but it affects your throat and your tongue as well. Now you may have fat gathered up in your throat, less room for airway movement there, and you have fat in your tongue, a condition they would actually call fatty tongue. They want to inject chemicals in there to reduce that visceral fat in your tongue so that your tongue is not choking you off in the middle of the night. All you have to do is reverse your insulin resistance. That tongue bed thins down and your sleep apnea starts to go away. All right, there's more down here. Your memory is better, Edwin. Um, so I don't have a specific answer as to less palpitations from AFib. What I do know, yes, doing it regularly helps. Yeah, and you do crave more better food. let's go back to the AFib. And I know I skipped a couple of things there. It's not that I don't want to talk about them. I just wanted to grab some of these other questions. So I don't have a direct answer, but when I put my little thinking hat on, this is where my mind goes with it. If 95% of hypertension comes to insulin resistance, and we're asking for, hey, Mariah, when you fast, does your glucose go up? I'll answer that in a second. So 95% of hypertension is insulin resistance related. There are some that are just genetic defects, maybe a viral thing, something like that. But by and large, hypertension is insulin resistance. Now, 80% of cardiovascular disorders are linked to long-term hypertension. So if you're putting too much pressure on your heart, it starts to go defunct. So the only answer I have, which is not scientific, which is, you don't quote me, this is just where my mind is going. Yeah, less cortisol, less of the stress on your heart. So less cortisol, less salt retention. The veins are starting to be more flexible again. The veins are thinning out on the wall so that there's more room for blood to flow through, all of that. And when you're becoming insulin resistant, sugar is the cause of your cholesterol, not fat. So you start to get that insulin resistance under control, get those sugars under control, all of those things start to get better. Blood pressure comes down, your heart can start to breathe and function more normally. Okay. AFib, you guys, I'm not telling anyone who has AFib to not talk to your doctor, not do that, but I'm saying address your insulin resistance. It may just help you. Okay. So when you fast, does your glucose go up? Your glucose levels can go up when you're fasting. I know this because I followed my blood sugars during a 10-day fast just to see, because I like to understand what's going on in my body. I like to be very self-aware, and I advocate for you guys to do that as well. What I noticed was both ends of the spectrum. Now, my blood sugars never went high like they were when I was diabetic, but they would go up to 120, about 120 was the cap, maybe 150, but 120 was about the cap. Then they would drop back down to 60 as I used up that energy in my system. Not eating, days in, hadn't eaten anything, and my blood sugars are doing this really nice little rhythm of rise and fall, and it was a rhythm. It wasn't like, oh, they're high, now they're low, and random. It was a very nice wave pattern rhythm when I was fasting. So the interesting thing is your body is storing that glucose in your fat, in your liver. And as you start to fast and the body needs energy, it's going to start to pull that energy out from those fat cells. It's going to start to get some of that glucose that's been stored in a really fine factor in the liver, and you're going to see a rise and fall of your blood glucose. Now, 60, right? Some people will be like, "Oh my gosh, I get hypoglycemic." And now if you're really sugar adapted, and you drop your sugar levels, your body's going to freak out, right? So you're going to start to feel tired. You're going to start to have headaches. You're going to start to feel like this shivery, like you're just cold because you're so sugar adapted. So you need to address that a little more slowly. But when you start to become more insulin sensitive, that rise and fall of glucose is not happening naturally. You're not having this severe hypoglycemia that's detrimental. So according to Dr. Bickman, you can go down to about 60 on your glucose and still be fine. And I noticed that when I was tracking my blood sugars. There was a couple of nights where it dropped down to 60, and I'm gonna not lie, when in the very beginning I was like, oh wow, I'm afraid to go to sleep. What if I go to sleep and my blood sugars drop and now I'm in a coma or whatever? Nope. My blood sugars would always hit 60 at the low. Once it hit that, then they would start to rise again, and I'm like, huh. So I talked to Dr. Bickman. um, so yeah, the liver and the fat cells are just delivering more energy into the system. As it gets used up, it starts to drop. The body cues more. That's fat adapted. I'm using my fat cells for energy during that fast. So your glucose levels can go up during a fast because your body's releasing it into the body for energy. Yes. So Edwin, this helps much better than a probiotic, Danielle. So this has prebiotics in it. Now, if you have IBS, if you have a number of other issues, is it maybe worth putting probiotics in? Yes, but if you're not addressing why the probiotics in your gut are dying off, then adding extra probiotics in is just like having a plug in a system and dumping more in on top of it. It's not going anywhere. We need to clear out some of those negative gut bacteria by feeding the good bacteria. We don't need to always add more of the good bacteria in, which is what probiotics are. What about we feed the natural probiotics in our system by giving them prebiotics, the food they need? So, yeah, probiotics can help, but it's not going to cure the problem. So, wait, who's looking into the product now? Right, the stress and anxiety, boy, that's a negative circle, right? This is hard because um, when you have insulin resistance, it plays off a number of these other hormones. So cortisol going up can raise insulin resistance. Too much insulin or estrogen can raise insulin resistance. Insulin resistance in men can cause too much estrogen. Insulin resistance can cause this inflammation and lack of sleep and high stress, raising your cortisol. So, yeah, for me, it's always address the insulin resistance and then start ticking off at the other pieces like the cortisol by meditative processes. Get that mind under control a little bit. I'm ADHD, so yes, I can talk about this drastically. Like meditation and that mindfulness is difficult sometimes, but having moments to get my brain focused in helps. Getting regular rest and sleep helps with the cortisol levels. 2 years ago, when I started this, my cortisol levels were all over the place. That typically doctors were saying, I don't even know how you're upright because my cortisol levels were never in normal range at any point during the day. And they would just scratch their heads. But at that point in life, I would wake up a couple hours later, I'd be so dead tired, my body would hurt. At lunchtime, I would run out to the car. If it was wintertime, I would throw a blanket on, turn the car on, set my alarm. I would fall asleep for lunch because I was so tired I couldn't face it. Even when I was a world champion athlete, by the time I left work, I would drive to the gym, and unless I had somebody I had to meet there, I would have to kick my seat back in my car, and I didn't set an alarm. I just was like, I got to get rest before I can go add more stress to my body, and I would pass out, sometimes for 15 minutes, sometimes for 45 minutes to an hour before I had enough energy to get in the gym and do the workout I had to do because my cortisol was out of control. So the product for insulin resistance, oh, sorry, Tammy, you're on Facebook, so I'm going to send you a link right here. This is my link tree where all the information is and all the other platforms I'm on, and I'll send you the direct link to order. It's called the Feel Great System. It's a tea that we drink in the morning, and I can go over that again if anybody needs me to, and a pre-meal drink that I have. The tea helps with fat loss, it helps with satiety, it helps with energy. The pre-meal drink helps manage your insulin and your glucose levels. Okay, so, and thank you for the comments calling me beautiful. I don't miss those, and I very much appreciate them. Right, so the stress and anxiety are kind of, they're playing off, the insulin and cortisol are playing off of each other. And my highest A1C was 7.4. It's now 5.3. So Edwin, you should have a link that you can send him so you get a $10 credit when he purchases. And then if you're in my downline, you just let me know and I will coach him through. If you don't want to, I will take care of that. Your A1C was 109. Your A1C couldn't be 109 or you would not be here. I don't know what that was, Mariah. And I probably misread it. Help like a probiotic. Non-alcoholic fatty liver. Good morning, everybody. So the link, I can't drop the link in here because it won't, TikTok blocks it. So what you can do, or what I could do is this too, is just go to my profile picture right up here. When the white box below pops up, click on that. It'll take you to my profile. TikTok is a little more complicated, right? Right under my picture, which should be this picture here, you'll see red lights. When you see the red light symbols, right under that is a link. Click on that. It will take you to my landing page where the top option is where to buy the product. So unfortunately, I can't just put a link in here on TikTok. That's how you have to go about it. On Facebook, YouTube, I gave you the link. NAS, you have PCOS as well as a lot of stress, 57. Yep. So if you have PCOS, you have insulin resistance, most likely. Like it's such a high correlation that I would just say if you have PCOS, you have insulin resistance. And yes, stress increases when you have insulin resistance because of a number of actions in the brain, but also the hormones are off. So you have way too much testosterone and not enough estrogen. That can lead to stress and feelings of anxiety as well. So that's all linked to insulin resistance for sure. So again, on TikTok, you're just going to go to my profile picture. When the white box comes up, tap on that, find the link right below the red lights, and you're going to get there. Now, it's important when you get there, besides PCOS, Tina, yeah. So that was me too. You guys actually, I don't have the picture up today. I'll bring it back up tomorrow. But 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, when I started this, I went from world champion athlete to my health deteriorating so badly that I had a walker, a cane, and disability plates. Now, people were blaming the powerlifting for my joints failing, but actually the powerlifting was helping keep my bones and my muscles strong enough to take me through and not have me become diabetic until about 57. But my joints were so bad that my doctor said, Misha, if you squat one more time and it goes wrong, you're going to lose that leg. It was at that point that I had to decide to stop powerlifting and get the knee replaced. And then, yeah, life became very different. But I had all of that. So I couldn't walk up and down stairs. I would have to grab onto handrails. If you put me in front of a set of stairs, I would literally get angry. Not because I was lazy, because it was so painful. People just didn't understand the pain I was in, both from my hips and my knees and my whole body-wide pain, and this 50 extra pounds I was carrying, trying to drag it upstairs. Last summer, I ran up and down a set of stairs just to prove to my friend Steffi, so she knew me when I was doing the like angry at stairs thing, to show her how much better I was doing. Like running up and down stairs from being on a walker and a cane, from just addressing my insulin resistance. Did it take me 2 years to get there? Yes, it did. Did it take me longer than 2 years to get the walker and the cane? Yeah, that happened too. But I healed up so much quicker. So it really does link into all of these things, and that's why I talk about it. Um, it has some naturally occurring caffeine in. Thank you, Edwin. It lets you put it in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It does have some naturally occurring caffeine. Let's talk about caffeine and why this did not make my heart worse and helped it. Okay. So if you think about walking a tightrope, um, and you have this balance bar in front of you, right? And so you have this balance bar and you put caffeine on that. Now you're stable, but the caffeine starts to tip you, right? And you're struggling to stay center line. You have energy, but it's way too much. Maybe you're having jitters and whatnot. Coffee has a little bit of chlorogenic acids in it that helps balance it out. But the tea has these three adaptogens. What adaptogens do is they attach to the molecule of caffeine and they adapt how it acts in your body. So when we have the tea, it has more of the chlorogenic acids. So now we're starting to tip the scale. It has theobromine, which starts to help that effect. There's tipping the scale. And then it has mate saponins, which is the third one. And so now we're back on balance. We have energy, but we're not tipped over where we're falling off and feeling this high slamming up and down crash where it's affecting our heart, all of that. It's just giving us energy, allowing us to burn fat for fuel, helping us stay satiated. There are some very few people. I'm working with someone now who seems to be very sensitive to it. So she's drinking less than a half a packet of the caffeine to start and seeing how it adjusts for her. You guys also understand, I've worked with a number of people who are literally just, I also used to do subconscious reprogramming and subconscious work for people as coaching, as a life coach. So look, when we have something set in our minds that something is going to be a certain way, we kind of tend to find evidence for it being that way. A lot of people that I have started on the product have just been so wary that they're finding evidence that something is wrong. And then when we find the science that says, well, it couldn't be this, and they really find out that it was something else, they're surprised. It takes a while, but don't let those mind tricks of you thinking a certain way about a thing affect you when there's science behind it. Now, what I do want to say is the protocol that I use, Dr. Bickman had a part in both of these products. Okay. Dr. Bickman and all of his metabolic work is part of why this whole thing came around. Now, they were already working on the pre-meal drink. Dr. Bickman came in, did some work on that, did some work on the Unimate. He does not work for the company, but he did a lot of work on it because it is in line with how he feels we should be addressing insulin resistance. Now, Dr. Bickman wrote this book, Why We Get Sick, and he also is one of the top metabolic scientists in the world. That's pretty powerful to me that that scientist had a part in developing these and speaks about how great this type of protocol works. He also speaks out about the fact that Metamucil and Benefiber are not going to work, that the regular herb bagged tea does not work. So there's that. I hope that answered the question about caffeine. Now, Moggy, I didn't get a question come through, just my name. So if you had a question, please ask it. Naz, you're very, very welcome. If you have any other questions, please ask. That's what I'm here for, is to help and to answer those things. And guys, I talk about the product probably less than I should because I get so geeked out by all the science and all the stuff that's linked in. Because it was crazy to me earlier in the live, and maybe a bunch of you weren't on, but somebody said something about me not being a doctor. Where I was going with that is, how many doctors, Metamucil is not going to do the job. It can marginally help, but so Metamucil is one type of fiber, sometimes two. Let's go back to fiber. So what it really takes to get your blood sugars down is a mix of soluble and insoluble fibers. So why, Jacqueline, thank you. So the insoluble fibers are long strands. Like you'll see them in the bananas, you'll see them in celery, you'll see those long strands of fibers. Well, when they get in your system, what happens is they create a mesh, okay? But if you look at the mesh, there's gaps in it, right? So there's these little holes. So they create a structure. Then the insoluble or the soluble fibers create like a gelatin mass. But if you can imagine this gelatin mass with no structure to give it shape or hold, it doesn't work as well. So when you add this matrix or this mesh and then put the gel in, now the gel starts to plug up those holes. So now both fibers together are starting to encapsulate those sugars as you eat them, slow down how they deliver to the system. So instead of it being like this direct shot of sugar into your system, it's slowing it down. So instead of your sugars going like this, your sugars go like this. Okay, so when they don't go like this, when they go like this, insulin stays low. Into acidosis, because they're fat adapted. That's a whole other topic, but there is some evidence for that. So if you have fat on your body and you're doing keto, you're just metabolically adapted. So acidosis is like type 1 diabetes, where you're not having enough insulin to deal with. I'm not even, I'm going to shut up right there because I'm not the expert on ketoacidosis. You don't, if you choose celery, break down that a little bit, right? But is the long strandy, yeah, I'm sure this is kind of gross, but I worked in medical clinics, so I had to look at poop a lot. But if you looked at someone's poop who ate a lot of celery, not celery juice, but celery with the fiber attached, you would see some strands in there, okay? So those strands don't go away completely, and they do stay and create this matrix. So a strand doesn't have to be like this to create the matrix in your system. It can be a very short strand for them to start creating that meshwork in your system, okay? So the product is a tea that I drink in the morning and a pre-meal that I have with both of my meals combined with some intermittent fasting. You'll find it in my, Edwin dropped the link for me earlier, but you'll find it in my profile. I don't know if I can drop it here. Let me try it, because usually it doesn't show up for you guys when I do it. Let me see if it will work. Oh, my things aren't working together now. There it is. Okay, does anybody see the link that I just dropped? Can you guys see that? That's where you're going to get it if you see it. Okay, so it takes both types of okay, good. Generally it doesn't. So, well, that makes it easier, huh? So that link is where you're going to go. All right. Where are we? What does Beckman talk about Metamucil? Okay, so Metamucil, this stuff, right? Psyllium husk and maltodextrin, both are fibers. They can work slightly for this, but I'm going to tell you a couple of things about this. A lot of those have extra sugar added in, and what we're trying to do is regulate sugar. Why would we take something that has extra sugar in it to try and regulate the sugar that we're already eating? That doesn't work. So Metamucil got smart and they started reducing that. But real life, okay, I've had people do the call, and it costs about $5 a day. So I want you to be aware of that. You're looking at a $5 a day expenditure. So do the Starbucks and do something for your health. But they stopped because I've heard all these people who are like, oh, just do herbal mate tea, just do Metamucil. And they're like, yeah, I really can't afford this. So they stopped. And a few months later, they called me back and they were like, Misha, the whole Metamucil herbal mate thing just didn't work the same. And I'm getting sick again. Can I get back on the system? Of course you can. You guys, there's no, we all have moments. We want to believe something else. Let's go find it out. But know that you need to address your health. I also have a client who was doing this every day, and her husband was doing this. He ran out of this, and so she put a couple of these in his lunchbox. That day, he came home and said, and he wasn't a proponent of this. He was spending way too much money on that. But as a man who was using this every day, ran out of it and had to use this, he came back and told his wife, that stuff is amazing. It doesn't even work the same. This is junk compared to this. That was somebody in real life who said that. So there's that. And Metamucil, it just isn't designed for this. So we have a product that's spent 20 years in the making to create this product that is actually addressing insulin resistance and therefore diabetes, and a fiber product that said, hey, this company did all the research and there's all these things out there. So we're going to start saying this is good for your blood glucose, even though there's no scientific studies behind the product Metamucil to say that it does what it does. And there are scientific studies behind that. So, all right, guys, I've been about an hour in. Are there any other questions before I hop off and start calling people back and taking care of them this morning? Do you have any other questions about stuff? Yeah, so cost of the product. So Edwin is saving about $450 a month. You guys, yeah, it's like $154, and that seems like right when it's in one big payment. But if you take a look, and I did this with Jason, who's lost over 160 pounds on system, whose doctor wanted him on all the weight loss drugs, whose doctor wanted him to have gastric surgery, and he's now done everything that the doctor would have thought he would do on those medications, but did it naturally and didn't have any damage to liver, all of that. But When you can see that this is actually going to work, there's guarantees for it. Why not do the natural route? So $5 a day. When we sat down and calculated, both of us, what we were doing, eating, drinking before the system, not just in the daily budget for food, but in the excess little stop here for a candy bar, a soda pop, whatever, we were spending far more than that to try and fill our body with energy. Now I'm eating 2 meals a day. Those meals are more focused on nutrients. So people are like, it's too expensive to eat healthy. What? Who taught you that? And how many people keep saying, because if I'm eating 2 meals a day that are nutrient dense, giving me about 1,800 calories a day, I'm spending a little bit more to have quality food, but I'm not buying all the junk food because I'm not having all the cravings. I'm not going to the doctor twice a month because I'm having all my health failing. I'm not buying 10 different medications at about $10 a pop. I save well over the 154 that's me in a month for the system. I figured I saved $300 to $400 a month as well. Oh, thank you, Crafty. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. You guys, the positive love that you guys give me is always so welcome and needed more than you understand. Every one of you guys for all good energy you do give me on my lives. Hemochromatosis and diabetes too. That's not what I've looked into. So, Catherine, if you'll allow me to do some research into that, because I'm just a layperson like you guys, I would be more than happy to look into some links and see if I can find something from some of these talking about it. If there's a link and what that is, let me write it down on my little paper here. I didn't even get to the things I wanted to talk to, so I am going to stay on for just a few minutes more because I wanted to talk about fats. The other day, there was somebody on claiming to be a doctor saying I didn't know anything about hexane and the stuff that I talked about. So I get a little fiery and I'm like, okay, well, no, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand all this stuff. So I did some research. And yes, the articles came from like the NIH, PubMed, but they did talk about hexane. Now, the saying is there are trace amounts of hexane left in the seed oils, just like I said. That hexane is a salt and it is used in industrial applications, just like I said, that it can be neurotoxic in your system, just like I said. Now, it's not like you're drinking hexane. When you're using large amounts of seed oil, especially when you're going out to restaurants, that everything is cooked in those, that's one component of why you're getting sick. Dr. Bickman just posted on Twitter yesterday or this morning about linoleic acid, which is seed oils, vegetable oils, that has an action that increases your insulin resistance. He posted that on Twitter. I don't have all of the knowledge down. I haven't had a chance to read the paper that he just posted that goes along with it. But whatever, there's 2 actions that talk about these seed oils being negative for your health, for insulin resistance, inflammation, and a number of other things happening. Oh, one of the interesting things was hypertrophic versus hyperplastic fat cells and what happens with linoleic acid. And so I can try and summarize that. If you don't know already, if you haven't heard my lives before, you do not always just have the fat cells you're born with. Some of us replicate fat cells. That's called hyperplasticity. They're multiplying, sometimes like little bunnies. And that's how some people are extremely obese and yet have low insulin because they have more places for sugar, for low glucose levels, because they have more places for the insulin to store. Some of us have hypertrophic fat cells, which means our fat cells are inflating or depleting, but duplicating. Less space to store the glucose. So they typically are lean and then hit diabetes and then go rapidly into diabetes. The linoleic acid inhibits the growth of those fat cells, which sounds like a good thing, right? But what happens when it inhibits the growth of those fat cells is it allows for less space for the glucose to be stored. Now it ends up in your blood creating more insulin resistance. So you can go read his comment and see what he has to say about it. He went into a little bit of depth on, again, seed oils not being the best thing for you for insulin resistance. Now, again, metabolic doctor talking about the negative effect of seed oils on your metabolic health. I hope that made sense. Garth, that's amazing. I have not had the bell out, but for both Garth and Edwin. So Garth is taking the product. His skin tags are all gone. Still working on the diabetes and neuropathy. But the fact that the skin tags are going away is a really good clue and indicator that your insulin resistance is getting under control. And that's exactly what you want. And so your diabetes and your neuropathy, the neuropathy will follow the diabetes. Getting that under control is going to help. I had neuropathy or I had nerve pain in my right arm. I couldn't hold on to regular glass just by holding it anymore. It would slip out of my hands because I just couldn't grip. I had feet that would an hour of me getting up and were so painful to walk on that I just didn't want to get up and walk. And all of that's gone. And I have a picture of my feet before the system and after. You could see where they were swelling. They were starting to bruise. I was in danger of having some diabetic foot sores, and which leads to bone loss. And once it gets into your bones, it can be difficult. So, disclaimer: if you guys don't want to hear about it, go now, because I did work in an assistant, but I think it's important that you understand how horrible diabetes can affect you. Okay, so we had a young man who came in, had diabetes, started off with losing some toes. That infection from diabetes in his bone kept spreading. They kept taking more and more of his bone to try and get ahead of the diabetes. But every few months he would be back, having had a surgery, being on extreme IV therapy for infections. And in the end, after a very long period of continually having bone removed and losing his legs, being in his 20s, beautiful young wife, forward. They eventually, the last time they had, for all effects, taken both of his legs completely. And the next thing I heard, he was gone. Diabetes is not to be played with. Diabetes is not to be played with. It can have such horrible health implications. Please be careful. Understand how devastating it can be. Your doctor, metformin. Oh yeah, okay. Thank you, Edwin. So drinking coffee is still okay as long as you're not putting carbohydrates and milk in it, but you'll eventually realize you don't need the coffee. This works better. The energy levels are more stable, and you're getting much effect for the energy through tea that I'm drinking. My daughter was a huge Dutch Bros drinker, and she only does it for treat now every once in a while, but then even when she has it, she's like, oh, it just doesn't taste the same. Somebody who is having Dutch Bros Starbucks every day no longer drinks coffee and has the tea instead. So you do start to understand the difference, and it does get better, but there's nothing wrong with drinking coffee on the system. Metformin is probably the least damaging of all diabetes drugs, but again, it's not addressing the root cause of why your A1C is off, why your blood sugars are off, why your insulin is high. So you're going to be, yes, I will do this for the rest of my life because I'm going to eat for the rest of my life. Metformin is a drug you're putting in your body for the rest of your life. This is nutrition I'm putting in my body for the rest of my life. I missed those. Thank you, Edwin, for being on top of it. Yes. So Edwin's absolutely correct. You do 90 days of the product. You have a guarantee. So you're guaranteed this. It used to just be blood work at 90 days, but that means your A1C, your blood glucose, your triglycerides go down, or you get back. But now they have a satisfaction guarantee because they believe in the product so much and have seen so much how it works. And we want people to do it for 90 days because it is not a medication. This is addressing your health and your nutrition. So you've got to give your body time to adjust. So if you're going to do the system, commit to 90 days to do it. You will see a difference in your health You'll get coaching by me. You'll get the guarantees of the money back. If you do 90 days and you're not feeling better, you're not noticing those things, and you'll get your money back. So it's not causing harm. It's only helping your health. Why wouldn't you take that chance? For nutrition for insulin resistance, let's talk about that. Star Bright. The product is a tea that I drink in the morning and a pre-meal drink that I have before my first two biggest meals of the day, and I do some fasting. And I'm so happy that this is showing up today. And you can look at it right there. So for nutrition for insulin resistance, you guys, of course, you want to stay away from anything that's high glycemic foods. The more insulin resistant you are, and the faster you want to address it, the more aggressive you're going to have to be. If you live your life, look, the protocol that I do allows you to have the food and the lifestyle you love. So if you love Indian food, eat that. If you love Mexican food, eat that. If you love Italian food, eat that. But we're going to make these adjustments. You want to get fiber in first before you eat every time you eat. And the fiber that I take has the right to mediate your sugars and your fats, but it also has a vitamin panel in it that are helping with metabolism. Then you want to get protein in first. I am not an expert on vegan proteins. However, I have an ebook called 6 Simple Steps, and it's these 6 steps in the ebook form. And I do link you to someone who has more information about those sources of protein. You'll get that list of types of protein. For diabetes, really, Dr. Bickman and a number of doctors have been coming out talking about the fact that red meat really is probably the best protein for diabetics. I know, counterintuitive, but it's real. So red meat is the best. And then you want to get in like salmon 2 to 3 times a week for the omega-3s. I eat a lot of chicken, but meat is a high priority. Yeah. So, and just because I do the protocol doesn't mean I can just skip my vegetables. I want to eat my vegetables as well. So we typically have salads. I don't as much because I just can't get through them as quickly, although I have some in the fridge I need to get out. But I also focus on things like asparagus, broccoli. So above ground vegetables. Ozempic can help with insulin resistance, but it can also do a lot of harm to your body in a number of ways. This gives you the benefits of Ozempic without the drug and the side effects. This is giving you nutrition for body and allowing your body to give those same effects of Ozempic naturally. Does it work as quickly? No, but it's not going to damage your liver, your kidneys, your thyroid, all of that, or overload your pancreas, which Ozempic is already starting to have lawsuits for gallbladder issues and issues. So A1C is 5.6, but your insulin resistance is at 40 something. So your insulin resistance, all right. So look at A1C is not going to go up until the body can't take the insulin in someplace else. If your insulin resistant number is at 40, typical science says 10 or low is where your HOMA insulin should be under. But if you are at 40, you're definitely insulin resistant. So you have a lot of insulin coursing through your veins, meaning your cells are becoming insulin resistant or not taking up that energy. New doctors, gosh, I cannot remember the doctor that I was listening to, Lustig. Dr. Lustig was talking about that he would prefer to see those insulin levels below 5. So that's a huge difference. Your A1C is low. Your A1C is not going to go up until your insulin does not have any more places to store the sugar you're eating. The fact that your insulin is high means that you're converting sugar too much, too quickly, and Ozempic and metformin are not going to help that. Yeah, so you can have an insulin resistance test. The best one is the HOMA, HOMA insulin resistance test. If you really want to do it, you don't have to do it to know that you're insulin resistant. And a lot of doctors talk about the fact the symptoms that I give you for telling if you're insulin resistant come from those doctors. So if you have a HOMA IR test, general knowledge, and I think the NIH and some other doctors would say 10 or below. Dr. Lustig, who is actually working highly on metabolic research as well, kind of in the same level as Dr. Bickman, would say 5 or less for your HOMA IR. Okay, 5 or less according to Dr. Lustig. And I would, you guys, when I look at these numbers, what I tend to think is, if it's coming from the American Diabetes Association, you guys would think that's a good place to get it, right? But yet the American Diabetes Association is telling you to do fruit juices. They're telling. I worked in also. I've done a lot of work, across a lot of places. You guys have been a logger. I've been a retirement homes, worked in convalescent homes, worked in doctor's offices, whatever. But typically for our patients who are diabetic, according to the American Diabetes Association, we would have to go make sure they had orange juice every couple hours. We're making them more diabetic when we do that. I didn't know that then. I know that now. So the American Diabetes Association and Dr. Lustig talks a lot about how they have a lot of this wrong too. So I'm let me look at that, because that's a different test. Was your doctor an endocrinologist? What type of doctor were they? And I am not a doctor, so I'm not going to negate anything they say. But regardless, a level of 42 for insulin sounds really high to me. According to our tests, and I would need to see some data on what they consider to be normal for that specific test. But generally here they're saying, oh, he says you're healthy and don't need medication yet. Don't, you guys, this is my opinion. Time out. My opinion. Don't do the medication. Why? You're not deficient in a medication. That's not what's causing the illness. The fact that you have high blood pressure means you're already insulin resistant. So if your doctor is telling you that, I would invite you to start looking for a doctor who understands insulin resistance better, because most of these doctors, in fact, a doctor that I just started following as well, who talks more about insulin resistance and metabolic health, and she very outwardly talks about the fact that they were not taught any of this in med school. Yeah, so you do have insulin resistance, and if they're saying 19 or above on that test, I'm going to tell you that metabolic scientists would probably drop that in about half. Okay. If you have high blood pressure, let's talk about the things that are happening in your body with high blood pressure. And the doctor's saying, oh, you don't need medication, but your blood pressure is high. It's okay. Maybe you don't need diabetes medication, which I don't advocate for them. Maybe in certain severe instances where people are just so resistant that they can't do anything else for a short time, I can maybe make room for that. But most of us don't need medications. So when you have high blood pressure, your blood vessels are narrowed and they're becoming more stiff. That's putting a whole lot of load on your heart. They're not able to open up like they should because your body's not producing nitric oxide. Your body's always producing a little bit of cortisol. So you're probably having anxiety and as well as that high blood pressure. Are any of those good? Do you really want to wait for your A1C to go high to start addressing the fact that you're putting your heart at risk? And if your heart's at risk, your liver's at risk. Okay. So again, I would invite you to try and find a doctor who understands insulin resistance, because they are not educated on it. They're not. More and more doctors are coming out talking about the fact that they were not taught any of this in med school. So star bright star, I would honestly do the protocol. Give it 90 days, because that's what's going to change it for you. I was put on metformin. I did the medical medium. I did veganism. I did all the stuff. I did really strict keto. I wasn't getting better. Good morning, Curly. Cheers. Until I did the system. And right away, my mental clarity was back. My blood sugar started dropping. My blood pressure started dropping. I was not having the leg cramps in the morning anymore. About 3 months, skin tags were gone and the skin discoloration was gone, but my mental clarity was back within the first week. I had energy that I hadn't had in years. I didn't have to have the several times that I had. It was the one thing that changed my life. It's about $5 a day. Starbright. If you're in the US, it costs $150 for a month. If you do it on subscription, you're going to get access to me. You're going to get the 90-day money back guarantee, quality guarantee, which means they've tested it, triple tested it. So they test the herbals when they come in to make sure that it's the right thing, because there are some herbals that look, taste, and feel like the ones you want, but they're not the ones you're getting. Fraud happens everywhere, you guys. Just know fraud happens everywhere. So they test to make sure that it's exactly what that we wanted when we ordered, and then at the process they test to make sure that what we say on the label and what we're saying that it is there. So $5 a day. But when you're not having that breakfast meal, I'm having my tea and my 2 pre-meal drinks instead, because I'm still getting in all the nutrients I need. I just am doing it in 2 meals. And also let's talk about that. 'Cause I can't shut up this morning. I'm just in what a mode. But Dr. Bickman, there are no studies. I'm going to say again, there are no studies. There are no studies. There are no. Don't come at me for that. Dr. Bickman says, and it makes sense to me, now that I understand insulin resistance a little bit better. If we take the same 2,000 calories and we put it in 2 meals in a shorter point in the day, we're not spiking our insulin throughout the day, and we're not spiking it repeatedly. And then we add the fiber beforehand. Now we're not spiking it as high at all. We can still have that same amount of calories a day and not affect our insulin much and start to lose weight, because we're allowing glucagon to come out, as opposed to someone who's eating every 2 hours all day long. Same calories, continually spiking your insulin, spiking your insulin, spiking your insulin, spiking your insulin, leaving the insulin level high all day long, never really getting into that great fasting state where glucagon can come out to play. People who are talking about eating every 2 hours don't know the science. They know bro science, but they don't know the science. Do I want to listen to a gym guy who says eat every 2 hours, it's going to fix your metabolism? Or do I want to listen to doctors like Dr. Lustig and Dr. Bick, who are specialists? That's all they study is metabolic health. I'm going to listen to the doctors who know what they're doing. Okay. All right, with that, guys, I have been hanging out for much longer than I thought I would. I appreciate you. I love you. I love all the questions and the input. And down 20 pounds. Carmen, that's amazing. You guys, your life will change. Your life will change. My daughter hung out for a while and didn't do it because, kids, family are the most resistant to this. In some cases, family are the most resistant. But now both of my daughters are on the system. My son is just stubborn. He should be on it, but he's just stubborn. He doesn't have to think about taking fiber, and he doesn't want to have that much accountability, to be honest. But I have 2 grandchildren, a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, who are doing the system. If you buy it from Amazon, Starbright, why would you spend 2 hours with me to have the coaching and the help and then go buy it on Amazon, where you're not getting any of the guarantees, you're not getting any of the anything, you're not getting any coaching, you're not getting any of that. You're likely to get an expired or pirated product, because there are no, and you didn't know this, so I'm going to address it now. There are no authorized sellers on eBay, Walmart, or Amazon. Okay. And yes, when you go to Amazon, I've had so many people be like, Misha, I bought it, you didn't contact me. Well, you bought from Amazon and you paid about $100 too much. Number one, I didn't know you got it. And number two, you bought it from somebody else. Okay. Yeah, 50 to 100. I've had people pay more than $100 more on Amazon. You can buy fiber supplements, and you can, so let's take a look at let's do an analogy. Buying Benefiber or Metamucil is like riding a bike 30 miles to get to work, or you hop in like this nice little car I have outside here and get to work much more efficiently. So will it get you there? Maybe, but do you want to do it more efficiently? Does a SUV cost me more than a bicycle? Yep. But when I got 30 miles to drive both ways every day, do I want to drive the SUV or do I want to ride the bicycle? I'm taking the SUV. Not in Maryland, not when you're going into Baltimore. Not necessarily. Biking is healthy, but how many people have the time and energy to do a 30-mile trek both ways on their bike? By the way, when I was younger, I lived about 15 miles out of town, and I rode my bike to work many, many times. Daddy, you need to open your mind a little bit and stop being such a crabby ass. Okay, black tea and salted caramel break your fast. Black tea, if you're not adding to it anything to it, will not break your fast. No. In fact, you can mix this with a number of different teas that are just the bagged teas if you want a flavor difference. But understand that a lot of those teas are going to have molds and whatnot in them. When Oh, good. I'm gonna come back to this, Daddy. Um, so I worked for actual doctors, metabolic doctors, hormone doctors. We did all the tests, we did all the studies, we did all the stuff. And you know what I got from that doctor? There's nothing I can do for you. You know, there are also, when I had all of these symptoms up there, doctors would tell me they would give me medications. I was on 10 different medications. I found the protocol. I reversed all of that. My doctor now is asking me what I did. So, my doctor says I should be a doctor. So, Daddy, take a seat. How do you solve dizziness, vertigo from vestibular migraine? It's not my area. I deal with insulin resistance. There's no actual doctors are doing this. So we have neurologists, cardiologists, endocrinologists who are all utilizing this. The ones that have tried it and understand, pharmacists who are recommending it over the medications. They can't make diet. They can't prescribe, but they would suggest this if they were and they are a doctor, just not a medical doctor or a physician. Oh, black tea, the black Unimate and the salted caramel. I gotcha. So the black Unimate does not break your fast. The salted caramel, the excess calories in it are from fats. So what I understand for your fast, that's not spiking your insulin, so it does not break your fast. Okay. So I'm just going to block him because if he's going to be this kind of person, I just don't need that in my life or yours. Because, yeah, here's the thing, people are trying to get help, they're trying to understand their health. And, if medical doctors are not taught this, or finding doctors who are learning this, who are recommending it, and this bro wants to come in and try and derail people, that's not cool. Because in the end, I want you to get your health back. Look, if you choose not to do the system, you do something else and get your health back, amazing. But for most of us, we need some help, and that's where the system comes in. I blocked him. Okay. Trolls need love too. I have PCOS, but I'm not overweight, so I'm not sure if I have insulin resistance. Yes. So we were talking about that earlier. You can be heavy and not be insulin resistant, and you can be thin and be very insulin resistant. Not every person who has some excess weight is extremely insulin resistant. There are some metabolic differences, some genetic differences. However, just because you're thin doesn't mean that you're not insulin resistant. If you have PCOS, there are a number of people that acts differently in your body. Um, and I don't have all the science behind that. Dr. Lustig was just talking about this last weekend, that there's this thing called skinny fat, where you're more metabolically sick than someone who has some excess weight. So if you've got skin tags, that's most likely insulin resistance. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, I mean, I run into this all the time. Like there's a kid that our family knows, and he asked me about it. I don't go push it, but he said, "What is it, Misha?" And he took it to his dad and presented it to his dad, and his dad's on Monjaro, and his dad was like, "Yeah, I know about all the negative side effects about Monjaro." but it's working for me and it's not giving me those negative side effects that we know about. So I'm just going to continue with that. And yet then he has two dads, right? Stepdad and real dad. And yet real dad, like, whoa, I don't want all the effects of the medication. I want to do something natural. So personal choice. But here's the thing. When I have people calling me talking about their thyroid failed, their pancreas is at risk, their liver is having problems, they lost their gallbladder, all of these things that are side effects of those drugs, why would I ever advocate for that? You have skin tags. Yes, those are. So just try the system and I'm going to be there with you. So the black and the caramel tastes like a caramel mocha. I am not a fan, but I was never a big fan of coffee, of either one of those drinks. However, there are a number of people who absolutely love it. Yeah. Star Bright. Yeah, just block him. He's just, who knows. Um, and if you're giving people damaging information, I God bless his soul. Hopefully he finds the peace he needs. Went to your here in Sydney, and actually, AJ, I'm working on getting a team built there in Australia, because we're very aware that Australia has probably a parallel problem to the US and it's not well represented there yet. So I have some people there who are going to be starting to address it there in Australia, and hopefully we'll get, although it's available in Australia, we're really trying to get the word out in Australia. If you have questions, I would love to give you the name of someone there who's with me, so you'll get both us, someone on boots on the ground there, and me for coaching. So message me if you want that. Start fasting with a 48-hour fast. If you're not, here's the thing, if you're not accustomed to fasting, there are a few things you're going to need to do before you go into a longer fast, okay? If you're having a high amount of carbohydrates, I would say to avoid things like the keto flu, the headaches and all of that, what you should do is start to get your sugar levels down first and then go into a fast. If you're eating a high amount of carbs and you do a fast, you're going to have headaches, you're going to have a lot of adverse reactions. Is a 48-hour fast good? Yes. But if you're doing it coming off of high sugar load, understand that you're going to have some, you probably will have some negative things, headache and flu-like symptom. Yes. And in Sydney, it's actually coming from Singapore, but still about 5 to 10 days in Sydney. Here in the US, generally it's 3 to 5 days. On occasion, it can be 10 days depending on FedEx location and the availability of the product. You're very, very welcome. Okay, with that, guys, I do have to get off. It's been almost 2 hours. AJ, there's also, I got my calling plan set up so I can call Australia directly. I do use WhatsApp so I can talk to people there as well. Either way, my number is in this link if you want to get a hold of me, and then you can order from me and I can get you under the person in Australia so that you can start having help there. Either way, I'm good with that. I will take care of it, but just let me know and reach out. If you guys need to talk to me, my WhatsApp number is there for a reason. I often can't get calls, but text, whether you're on the system or not, will help where I can, okay? Thoughts of walking 30 minutes a day? Absolutely perfect. You guys move your body for at least 30 minutes a day. Okay, 30 minutes a day. So if that looks like walking, good. Does it have to be 30 minutes all at once? No. If you're eating 2 meals and you want to do a 15-minute walk after each meal, perfect. Okay. Or if it's just doing some intense house chores, like I've been painting furniture, picking stuff up, moving things around, just move your bodies, get up off your butt, get away from the blue screen, the electronics. And actually, here's the thing, Hannah, personal note, if you're going to take a walk, you guys, if you're going to take a walk, especially in nature, take the headphones out. Listen to nature. It's good for your brain. Okay. So Dr. Huberman talks about that a little bit. Take the headphones out. Allow your brain to focus on what you're doing and get those walks in. Some of the best things you can do for insulin resistance. It doesn't have to be crazy workouts. 15 minutes 2 times a day is better than nothing. Okay. All right, you guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Okay. Thanks for hanging out and have a beautiful, blessed day. Thank all of you for interacting. And I sure appreciate everyone who hangs out with me every morning. See you tomorrow. Bye, guys. Thanks for your interactions this morning.